Hyunwoo Kim stood in the massive chamber and felt very small. The room was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Strange lights floated in the air above him, casting weird shadows on the walls. All around him sat creatures that looked like nothing from his home planet. The biggest ones looked like living crystals. They sparkled and reflected light in all colors. Their leader sat on a throne made of the same crystal material. Sharp edges caught the light as it moved its head to look at Hyunwoo. Next to them were beings that looked like giant squids, but they floated in the air without water. Their tentacles moved in patterns that might have been a language. On the other side of the room were creatures made of pure light. They had no solid bodies at all, just glowing energy that shifted and changed shape. Hyunwoo wore his best suit, the one he had worn to meet presidents and kings back on Earth. Here it looked cheap and simple. His briefcase contained all of humanity's greatest achievements printed on paper. Photos of cities, spaceships, and art. Now those things seemed like toys compared to what he saw around him. The crystal being on the throne spoke. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. So this is the human representative. How amusing. Other crystal beings made sounds that might have been laughter. The sound hurt Hyunwoo's ears. I am Council Prime Vextara, the crystal leader said. We have reviewed your species' application to join our Galactic Council. Tell us, little human, what makes you think your people deserve a place among the civilized races of the galaxy? Hyunwoo had practiced this speech 1,000 times. He opened his briefcase and pulled out photos of Earth's greatest cities. We have built amazing things, he began. Our cities house millions of people. We have art, music, and literature that spans thousands of years. One of the floating squid creatures made a sound like bubbling water. Art? Music? How primitive. Our youngest children create symphonies that reshape reality itself. Hyunwoo continued, trying to keep his voice steady. We have traveled to space. We have ships that can cross between star systems. This made the crystal beings laugh harder. The sound was like breaking glass. Vextara leaned forward on its throne. Your ships use fusion power, correct? How delightfully ancient. We stopped using such crude methods millions of years ago. A being made of light floated closer to Hyunwoo. When it spoke, its voice sounded like electricity. We have examined your vessels. They are held together with metal bolts and welds. Our ships are grown from pure thought and exist in 17 dimensions at once. Hyunwoo felt sweat on his forehead, but he kept going. We have artificial intelligence systems that can think and learn. The laughter grew louder. Vextara's crystal body flashed brighter. Your computers are made of silicon and copper. Ours are made from the fabric of space and time itself. They solve problems that would take your machines billions of years to even understand. What about your military? Asked another crystal being. Surely you have weapons to defend yourselves. Hyunwoo showed pictures of Earth's most advanced warships. We have particle beam weapons and nuclear missiles. Our shields can stop most attacks. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again, louder than before. Some of the alien beings seemed to be having trouble breathing, if they breathed at all. Nuclear weapons? Vexitara gasped between laughs. They still split atoms for power. How wonderfully backward! One of the squid beings floated down from the ceiling. We learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality when your sun was still a cloud of gas. We can make entire solar systems appear or disappear with a thought. The light being that had spoken before flickered with what might have been amusement. Their shields stop physical attacks. How sweet! Our weapons exist outside normal space and time. There is no defense against them. Hyun-woo felt his face growing red, but he had one more thing to try. We are a young species, but we learn fast. We adapt to any situation. In just a few hundred years, we went from riding horses to traveling between stars. Adaptation? Vextara said. How long do your people live? About 80 years on average, Hyun-woo replied. The alien beings looked at each other. So brief, said a squid creature. We live for millions of your years. Some of us remember when your galaxy was young. And you reproduce by combining genetic material randomly, added a light being. We design our offspring to be perfect from the moment of creation. Vextara stood up from its throne. The crystal being was 3 times taller than Hyun-woo. Your species shows some promise as entertainers, or perhaps manual laborers. You are curious enough to be amusing, but far too primitive to contribute anything meaningful to galactic civilization. Hyun-woo felt anger building in his chest, but he forced it down. We only ask for a chance to prove ourselves. Very well, Vexitara said with what sounded like fake kindness. We will grant your species provisional membership in the Galactic Council. You may use our trade routes and visit our worlds. In return, your people will provide labor and entertainment for the civilized races. The other beings made approving sounds. Hyun-woo realized he was being dismissed like a child who had asked to sit at the adult table. Your ships will be given special markings so all can see their primitive nature, continued Vextara. Your people will not be allowed to carry weapons in civilized space. You are too young and too dangerous to be trusted with real power. As Hyun-woo left the great chamber, he heard the aliens still laughing behind him. Their voices echoed off the walls, following him down the long corridors to his small ship. Back on Earth, far below the mountains of Korea, Yoonji Lee worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. The room was filled with machines that looked nothing like the crude technology the aliens had mocked. Screens showed brain patterns and energy readings that would have made no sense to any scientist from just 10 years ago. She watched a video of Hyun-woo's meeting with the Galactic Council. When it ended, she turned to her assistant. They think we are children playing with toys. Should we tell them the truth? Asked the young man. Yoonji Lee smiled. It was not a kind smile. Not yet. Let them keep laughing. They will understand soon enough what humans are really capable of. She turned back to her machines where human volunteers sat in meditation chambers connected to devices that could barely be called technology. What the aliens had seen as humanity's weakness, their short lives, their emotional nature, their willingness to take risks, was actually the source of their greatest strength. The aliens had millions of years to build better machines, but they had forgotten something important. They had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. 6 months had passed since the meeting at the Galactic Council. Human ships now traveled the trade routes between alien worlds, carrying cargo and passengers as the Council had ordered. The alien races watched with amusement as the primitive humans struggled with tasks that seemed simple to advanced civilizations. Commander Tae-Min Park stood on the bridge of what looked like an ordinary cargo ship. The vessel was called the Mountain Wind, and from the outside it appeared identical to every other human transport in space. Its hull was made of simple steel and ceramic. Its engines were basic fusion drives that the aliens found laughably outdated. But Tae-Min knew the truth that the aliens could not see. Hidden deep inside the ship's ordinary-looking hull were chambers and equipment that represented humanity's greatest secret. The real cargo this ship carried was not goods or materials. It was something far more dangerous. "Status report," Tae-Min said to his crew. "All systems normal, sir," replied Lieutenant Bo-Ra Choi. She sat at what appeared to be a standard navigation console, but the screens in front of her showed readings that would have confused any alien observer. Instead of displaying engine temperatures or fuel levels, they showed brainwave patterns and consciousness energy signatures. Behind Bo-Ra, 12 other crew members sat in chairs that looked like simple pilot seats. But each chair was actually a sophisticated interface that connected directly to the person's nervous system. Cables ran under the floor to a room that the ship's blueprints listed as a storage compartment. "Approaching the test zone," announced the ship's pilot, Jae-Hun Nam. Through the main viewing screen, Tae-Min could see empty space between two star systems. No planets, no space stations, nothing but void and distant stars. It was the perfect place to test humanity's secret weapon without being observed. "Begin Phase 1, Tae-Min ordered. Bo-Ra placed her hands on her console and closed her eyes. The screens around her began to show new patterns as her brain activity changed. She took slow, deep breaths, following techniques that combined ancient Korean meditation practices with cutting-edge neurotechnology. In the hidden chamber below, machines that looked nothing like conventional computers began to hum with power. These devices did not process information with circuits and processors like normal technology. Instead, they amplified and focused human consciousness itself. Bo-Ra felt her awareness begin to expand beyond her physical body. It was a sensation that had taken months of training to master. At first, the feeling had been terrifying, like falling into an endless void. But now she embraced it, letting her mind reach out into the darkness of space. Her consciousness traveled faster than light, searching for the target that had been placed here days before. It was a simple probe, left behind by an alien trade ship. The probe was designed to monitor traffic in this region and report back to its owners. To any observer, the probe would appear to be functioning normally. Its sensors were scanning space, recording everything they detected. Its computer was processing this information and preparing to transmit it back to alien space. But Bo-Ra could see deeper than any conventional sensor. She touched the probe's systems with her mind, not through any radio signal or computer hack, but by directly interfacing with its electronic consciousness. The alien device had been built by creatures who thought in terms of logic and efficiency. They could not imagine a form of intelligence that operated outside those rules. Bo-Ra began to explore the probe's memory banks, learning everything it had recorded. She saw the paths that alien ships had taken through this region. She read private communications between crew members who thought their messages were secure. She discovered hidden military installations that did not appear on any public star charts. All of this information flowed back to the mountain wind through the connection between Bo-Ra's consciousness and the ship's systems. The other crew members, also connected to the network, absorbed this knowledge instantly. What would have taken alien computers hours to decode and analyze was understood by the human team in minutes. But Bo-Ra was not finished. She began to make small changes to the probe's programming, alterations so subtle that no alien technician would ever notice them. The probe would continue to function exactly as designed, but now it would also serve human interests. Phase 1. Complete, Bo-Ra announced, opening her eyes. The probe is compromised. We now have access to all alien traffic data in this sector. Taemin nodded. Begin Phase 2. This time, all 12 crew members in the interface chairs closed their eyes and joined the consciousness network. Their combined mental power reached out through space to touch systems on distant worlds. On a Vorthak crystal mining station 3 light-years away, workers suddenly found their equipment working more efficiently than expected. They attributed this to routine maintenance, never realizing that human minds were optimizing their systems in real time. On a Zephyrian science vessel studying a nearby nebula, researchers discovered that their computers were processing data faster than usual. They assumed their artificial intelligence had developed new algorithms. They did not know that human consciousness was helping their machines think in ways they had never been designed to think. On a Lumina energy collection facility orbiting a distant star, the beings of pure light noticed that their power output had increased by 12%. They celebrated this as a sign of their own growing mastery over technology. They could not sense the human minds that were gently guiding their systems to work more efficiently. All targets responding, reported crew member Dongwoo Song. No indication of detection. Taemin allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had built their civilizations on the assumption that consciousness and technology were separate things. They created machines to serve them, but they never imagined that consciousness itself could become the ultimate technology. Humans had discovered something that millions of years of alien advancement had missed. The gap between mind and matter was not a barrier to be overcome with better machines. It was an illusion that could be dissolved entirely. "Sir," Bo-Ra said, "I'm detecting an alien patrol approaching our position." On the main screen, a sleek Vorthak vessel appeared, its crystal hull reflecting starlight in beautiful patterns. The ship was easily 10 times more advanced than the mountain wind, with weapons that could destroy a planet and shields that could deflect the energy of an entire star. "Standard hail incoming," announced the communications officer. A crystal face appeared on the screen, its features sharp and geometric. "Human vessel, you are operating in a restricted zone. State your purpose." Taemin stepped forward, adopting the humble posture that aliens expected from humans. "Honored Vorthak Commander, We are conducting routine maintenance on our navigation. Systems, we will depart immediately. The alien's crystal features showed what might have been amusement. Your primitive systems require such frequent attention. Very well, be gone within the hour. The Vorthak ship moved away, its commander already, dismissing the humans as unimportant. But as it traveled toward its patrol route, the alien crew began to experience strange sensations. Their thoughts felt clearer somehow, their emotions more vivid. They attributed this to the natural beauty of space and continued their mission, never knowing that human consciousness had briefly touched their crystalline minds. Back on the mountain wind, Taemin watched the alien vessel disappear into the distance. "Prepare for return to Earth," he ordered. As the ship turned toward home, Bora remained connected to the consciousness network. Her awareness spread across dozens of star systems, touching alien technologies and minds with the lightest of touches. She gathered information, made small adjustments, and planted seeds that would grow when the time came. The aliens saw humans as primitive creatures playing with crude technology. They had no idea that humanity had transcended technology entirely. While alien civilizations built better machines, humans had learned to become the machines themselves. In the hidden chambers beneath Korean mountains, Yoonji Lee monitored the mission's progress. Around her, dozens of other human operators sat, in meditation poses, their minds reaching across the galaxy through quantum connections that alien science insisted were impossible. "The network is growing stronger," she told her assistants. "Every day, more humans join the connection. Soon, we will be ready." She looked at reports from human ships throughout alien space. Each vessel appeared to be nothing more than a primitive cargo hauler. But together they formed a consciousness network that spanned the galaxy, invisible to alien sensors and incomprehensible to alien minds. The aliens had laughed at human weakness. They had not realized that weakness could become the greatest strength of all. The attack came without warning, as attacks often do. The human colony on Kepler 442b was a small settlement of only 3,000 people. They grew food, mined minerals, and sent reports back to Earth about their progress. To any observer, they were harmless farmers and workers building a simple life on a distant world. Admiral Q-Wan Jang received the distress signal while he was drinking morning tea in his office on Earth. The message was short and desperate. Zephyrian warships approaching. Request immediate assistance. We cannot defend ourselves. Q-Wan set down his teacup and looked at the tactical display that appeared above his desk. 12 Zephyrian battle cruisers surrounded the colony world. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, capable of reducing the planet's surface to molten rock within minutes. The Zephyrians had not bothered to declare war or make demands. They simply wanted to demonstrate their power to the watching galaxy. Attacking a defenseless human colony would send a clear message about the natural order of things. "Sir," said his aide, "the nearest Earth defense fleet is 6 days away." Q-Wan nodded. He had expected this. The aliens had placed human colonies far from Earth's protection on purpose, making them easy targets for any species that wanted to test human resolve. "Send Captain Inho Song," Q-Wan ordered. The gentle current is in that sector. His aide looked confused. Sir, that's just a cargo vessel. One ship against 12 Zephyrian battle cruisers? Trust me, Q1 said with a slight smile. Captain Song has everything he needs. The gentle current looked exactly like what it claimed to be, an old cargo hauler carrying supplies between human settlements. Its hull was scratched and dented from years of service. Its engines were standard fusion drives that produced visible exhaust trails. Any military observer would dismiss it as harmless. Captain In-Ho Song sat in his command chair as the ship dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b. Through the main screen, he could see the Zephyrian fleet positioned around the planet like predators surrounding wounded prey. 12 battle cruisers, as reported, said his navigator, Min-Ho Lee. Each one could destroy us with a single shot. Only if they can target us, In-Ho replied calmly. Behind the bridge, in what the ship's official plans listed as a cargo bay, 12 human operators sat in meditation chairs. The room was dimly lit, filled with the soft hum of machinery that existed at the very edge of human understanding. Zephyrian fleet is hailing us, announced the communications officer. A squid-like face appeared on the screen, its tentacles writhing with what might have been amusement. Human vessel, you are interfering in a legitimate military operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. In-Ho stood up slowly, adopting the humble posture that aliens expected. Honored Zephyrian Commander, we are only here to evacuate civilian refugees. We pose no threat to your mighty fleet. The alien's tentacles twisted in patterns that In-Ho had learned to recognize as laughter. Evacuate? Your pathetic ship cannot carry even 1% of the colony's population. You have come here to die uselessly, like all humans do. Other Zephyrian commanders appeared on split screens, their squid-like forms floating in tanks of strange liquid. They spoke in their own language, but In-Ho's ship automatically translated their words. Shall we destroy the human ship first? Asked one. Let them watch, replied another. Let them see what happens to those who defy superior races. The lead. Commander turned back to In-Ho. You have 1 minute to witness the power of the Zephyrian Empire, then you will join your colonists in death. The screen went dark. Around the planet, 12 battle cruisers began to charge their weapons. Energy readings spiked as systems that could crack open moons prepared to fire. Begin Mind Bridge Protocol, In-Ho ordered quietly. In the hidden chamber, 12 human minds began to expand beyond their physical bodies. They had trained for this moment for months, learning to coordinate their consciousness into a single, focused force. The team leader was Eugene Park, a former meditation teacher who had volunteered for humanity's most dangerous experiment. She felt her awareness leave her body and reach out through space toward the Zephyrian fleet. Alien minds were different from human ones. The Zephyrians thought in patterns of logic and efficiency, their consciousness flowing like water through channels carved by millions of years of evolution. They experienced emotions, but those feelings were controlled and regulated by social conditioning that valued order above all else. Eugene touched the mind of the nearest Zephyrian pilot. At first, the alien did not notice the contact. Human consciousness was so different from what Zephyrians expected that their mental defenses simply ignored it. But then Yu-Jin began to share her memories. The alien pilot suddenly experienced the sensation of breathing air, something Zephyrians had never done. He felt the warmth of sunlight on human skin, the taste of water, the simple pleasure of walking on solid ground. These were sensations completely foreign to a creature that lived its entire life, floating in liquid-filled chambers. More disturbing were the emotions. The pilot experienced human love, not the controlled affection that Zephyrians felt for their offspring, but the wild, irrational devotion that humans showed for their families. He felt human hope, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. Most terrifying of all, he experienced human determination. The absolute unbreakable will that had driven humans from caves to starships in just a few thousand years. It was a force of will so intense that it overwhelmed the pilot's careful, logical thought patterns. The Zephyrian began to question everything he had been taught. Why was he here? Why was he about to destroy innocent people? What gave his species the right to decide who lived and who died? These thoughts were dangerous for a Zephyrian. Their society was built on absolute obedience to authority. Questioning orders was not just forbidden, it was literally unthinkable for a properly conditioned mind, but human consciousness operated outside those rules. As more human operators joined the mental link, the effect spread throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Pilots found themselves overwhelmed by human creativity. They experienced the joy of discovery, the pleasure of solving problems in new ways, the excitement of exploring unknown territories. These sensations were intoxicating to minds that had been trained for efficiency above all else. Engineers suddenly understood human innovation, the willingness to try impossible things and succeed through sheer stubbornness. They began to see flaws in their own ship designs, ways to improve systems that had remained unchanged for millennia. Commanders experienced human leadership, not the cold authority they were used to, but the warm responsibility that came from genuinely caring about the lives of subordinates. One by one, Zephyrian crew members began to abandon their posts. Some simply stopped working, overwhelmed by emotions they had no framework to understand. Others actively began shutting down their ship's weapon systems, unable to reconcile their orders with the human concepts of mercy and compassion they were experiencing. "Sir," reported one Zephyrian tactical officer, "I cannot lock weapons on the colony. The targeting system seems to be malfunctioning." The fleet commander's tentacles writhed in frustration. "Switch to manual targeting!" But the gunner at the weapons console had been touched by human memories of children playing in sunlight. He could not bring himself to fire on the families. Below, even though logic told him they were just inferior beings, I cannot, sir. My hands will not obey." Similar reports came from all 12 ships. Weapons would not fire. Navigation systems became confused, and crew members simply stopped following orders. The mighty Zephyrian fleet found itself paralyzed not by any human weapon, but by human nature itself. The fleet commander tried to maintain control, but he too had been touched by human consciousness. He experienced human courage, not the calculated bravery of a trained soldier, but the desperate heroism of ordinary people protecting their homes. "All ships," he commanded, his voice uncertain for the first time in his career. "All ships, withdraw from the system." "Sir?" asked his communications officer. "What about the human colony?" The commander looked at the peaceful world below, where 3,000 humans lived simple lives far from their home world. Through the link with human consciousness, he could sense their fear, their love for each other, their hope that somehow they would survive. "Leave them alone," he said quietly. This place is not important to the Empire." The Zephyrian fleet departed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving the colonists unharmed and confused. The gentle current had not fired a single shot, yet 12 advanced warships had retreated from one primitive cargo vessel. Captain In-Ho Song watched the aliens disappear into hyperspace. "Stand down, Mine Bridge Protocol," he ordered. In the hidden chamber, 12 human operators slowly returned to their physical bodies. They were exhausted but triumphant. They had proven that human consciousness could not only reach across space, but could overcome minds that had been shaped by millions of years of alien evolution. Back in alien space, the Zephyrian fleet tried to understand what had happened. There, reports spoke of equipment failures and temporary psychological disturbances. They could not bring themselves to admit that a human cargo ship had defeated them without firing a shot. The Vorthak Imperium had ruled the galaxy for 3 million years. Their crystal bodies could live forever, and their minds worked with perfect logic. They had watched countless younger races rise and fall, always maintaining their position as the galaxy's supreme civilization. War Prime Ket Zun was one of their greatest military leaders. His crystal form stood 12 feet tall, with edges sharp enough to cut diamond. He had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems, and his strategic mind had never known defeat. When reports reached him about the Zephyrian fleet's strange behavior, he dismissed them as weakness. The squid-like creatures had always been too emotional for proper warfare. But when similar incidents began occurring throughout alien space, Ket Zun decided to investigate personally. "The humans are using some form of psychological warfare," he told his staff officers. "Crude manipulation designed to exploit the weaknesses of inferior minds." His crystal body flickered with light patterns that indicated amusement. "We Vorthak have no such weaknesses. Our minds are pure logic, hardened by millions of years of perfect civilization." Ket Zun assembled a battle fleet of 24 vessels, each one a crystalline masterpiece that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Their destination was Earth itself, the human homeworld that the Galactic Council had dismissed as a primitive backwater. "We will demonstrate proper military procedure," Ket Zun announced to his fleet. "The humans will surrender unconditionally, or their world will be reduced to its component atoms." On Earth, Dr. Ji-hun Bae monitored the approaching Vorthak fleet from his command center deep beneath the Korean mountains. Around him, screens displayed information that would have seemed impossible just a few years before. real-time readings of consciousness patterns across the entire planet. "They're coming in fast," reported his assistant. 24 battle cruisers, all equipped with reality-shaping weapons. Ji-hun nodded calmly. "Alert all Mind Bridge stations. This will be our greatest test." In hidden facilities across Earth, 50 human operators prepared for battle. They were teachers, scientists, artists, and philosophers, people who had volunteered to become humanity's secret weapons. Each one had spent months learning to project their consciousness beyond their physical bodies. Master Practitioner Soo-Jin Nam led the team at the primary facility in Korea. She was an elderly woman who had studied meditation since childhood, combining ancient techniques with cutting-edge neuroscience. Around her, 49 other humans sat in specialized chairs that connected their minds to a network spanning the globe. "Remember," Soo-Jin said softly, "the Vorthak think in pure logic. They believe emotion is weakness and creativity is chaos. Show them what those things really are." The Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace like a constellation of deadly stars. Each ship was a work of art, geometric perfection, rendered in living crystal that sang with harmonic frequencies. Their weapons could unmake planets, and their shields could withstand the explosion of supernovas. War Prime Ketzun stood on his command bridge, a chamber carved from a single massive crystal. Through the transparent walls, he could see the blue-green world that had spawned humanity's primitive civilization. "Scan the planet," he ordered. "Locate their military installations and government centers." His tactical officer's crystal form pulsed with data. "Sir, we detect no significant defensive systems. A few orbital stations with primitive weapons, some surface installations that appear to be research facilities." "Pathetic," Ketzun said. "Open communications." Earth's leaders appeared on his screen. Ordinary humans in simple clothing, sitting around a wooden table like farmers discussing crop prices. Ketzun's crystalline features arranged themselves into an expression of contempt. "I am War Prime Ketzun of the Vorthak Imperium," he announced. "You will surrender your world immediately. Resistance is futile and will result in the complete destruction of your species." The human leader, President Dalshik Yoon, looked tired and worried. "Honored War Prime, we are a peaceful people. What have we done to deserve this attack?" "You have begun to interfere with the natural order of galactic civilization," Ketzun replied. "The Zephyrian incident, the disruption of trade routes, the subtle influence on other species, we know these are your doing." "We don't understand," President Yoon said, his voice shaking slightly. "We're just trying to survive in a galaxy that sees us as inferior." Ketzun's crystal body flashed with impatience. "Your lies are transparent. You have 1 hour to prepare for conquest. Any resistance will be met with total annihilation." The communication ended. In the hidden chambers beneath Earth's surface, 50 human minds began to reach across space toward the Vorthak fleet. Soo-Jin Nam felt her consciousness expand beyond her body, traveling faster than light toward the crystalline ships. She had trained for this moment, but facing the actual alien minds was still a shock. Vorthak consciousness, was like touching a perfectly cut diamond. Every thought was precise, every emotion controlled and channeled into useful patterns. They had evolved beyond what they considered the chaos of primitive thinking. But Su Jin brought them something they had never experienced: human creativity. The first Vorthak crew member she touched was a navigation officer whose job was to calculate hyperspace jumps with perfect accuracy. His mind worked like a biological computer, processing mathematical equations with flawless precision. Suddenly, the officer experienced something impossible: the joy of discovery. He felt what? It was like to solve a problem not through logical calculation, but through intuitive leaps and creative inspiration. He experienced the satisfaction of finding elegant solutions to impossible challenges. The sensation was intoxicating. For the first time in his million-year life, the Vorthak officer understood why humans took risks and tried impossible things. Logic told him that creativity was inefficient, but the feeling of inspiration was unlike anything in his experience. More human consciousness joined the link. A Vorthak engineer suddenly experienced human love, not the controlled affection his species felt for their offspring, but the wild, irrational devotion that drove humans to sacrifice everything for people they cared about. The engineer's crystal form began to crack. His logical mind could not process emotions so intense that they overwhelmed all rational thought. He started to question everything he had been taught about efficiency and order. A Vorthak weapons officer experienced human compassion. He felt what it was like to care about strangers, to feel pain when others suffered, to choose mercy over victory. The concept was so alien to his training that his crystalline body began to fracture as his mind tried to accommodate impossible thoughts. War Prime Kedzun felt the disturbance spreading through his fleet, but he could not understand what was happening. His crew members were abandoning their posts, their crystal forms developing visible cracks as they struggled with concepts that had no place in Vorthak civilization. Then the human consciousness reached him directly. Su Jin Nam touched the War Primes, mind with the full force of human creativity and emotion. He experienced human art, not the perfect geometric patterns that Vorthak considered beautiful, but chaotic explosions of color and sound that somehow created meaning beyond logic. He felt human music, rhythm, and melody that followed no mathematical rules, yet stirred feelings he had no names for. He experienced human stories, narratives that taught lessons through imagination rather than direct instruction. Most devastating of all, he experienced human dreams, the ability to imagine impossible futures and then work to make them real, the courage to hope for things that logic said could never happen. Ketzun's crystal body began to sing, a high, pure note that indicated severe stress. His perfect, logical mind was being overwhelmed by sensations that his species had spent millions of years eliminating from their consciousness. "Sir!" called his tactical officer, his own crystal form showing hairline fractures. I cannot target the planet. Every time I try to lock weapons, I see children playing in sunlight." The War Prime tried to maintain control, but human consciousness was showing him things that shattered his understanding of reality. He experienced human courage, the willingness to fight impossible odds not for logical reasons, but because it was the right thing to do. He felt human. Determination, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. He experienced human sacrifice, the willingness to give up everything for the sake of others. These concepts were viruses in his logical thought patterns, spreading through his consciousness and infecting every decision he tried to make. How could he destroy a world full of beings capable of such incredible feelings? Throughout the fleet, Vorthak crew members were experiencing similar breakdowns. Their crystal forms developed cracks and stress fractures as their minds tried to process human emotions. Some simply shut down, overwhelmed by sensations they had no framework to understand. "Fleet status report," Ketzun commanded, his voice distorted by the harmonics of his stressed crystal body. "Sir, 70% of all crew members are non-functional. Weapon systems are offline. Several ships are reporting critical structural damage to their crew's physical forms." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major civilization gathered in the great chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices filled with fear and confusion instead of the usual arrogance. The Lumina delegation arrived first, beings of pure energy who had never before shown concern about any physical species. Their leader, Bright Essence Zalthara, flickered with unstable light patterns that indicated extreme distress. "The reports are impossible to ignore," Zalthara announced to the assembled delegates. "Two separate fleets have retreated from human space without explanation. Our most advanced civilizations are being defeated by primitive cargo ships. Council Prime Vexitera of the Vorthak took his place on the crystal throne, but his form showed visible cracks from his encounter with human consciousness. The other delegates noticed these stress fractures immediately. Such damage to a Vorthak leader was unheard of. The humans possess some form of weapon that affects minds directly, Vexitara said, his voice distorted by harmonic interference. Our most logical thoughts become confused in their presence. A Zephyrian commander floated in her liquid-filled tank, her tentacles moving in agitated patterns. My fleet experienced temporary madness. We began to see the humans as people. Instead of inferior beings, the sensation was overwhelming. Other delegates shared similar reports. Alien crews abandoning their posts, weapon systems failing for no technical reason, and experienced military officers making decisions that defied all logic and training. "We must scan human space with our most advanced sensors," declared Zalthara. "Whatever weapon they possess, we will detect it and develop countermeasures." The Lumina were beings of pure consciousness, evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. If anyone could understand what the humans were doing, it would be them. Zalthara assembled a team of their greatest consciousness researchers and directed their combined awareness toward Earth. What they found shook them to their very core. Instead of advanced technology, they detected something impossible, a network of human minds connected across space and time through quantum consciousness links. Thousands of humans were meditating simultaneously, their awareness reaching out to touch alien systems throughout the galaxy. "This cannot be real," whispered one of the research team. "Primitive biological minds cannot achieve quantum consciousness projection. It requires millions of years of evolution beyond physical form." But the evidence was undeniable. Humans had somehow learned to weaponize consciousness itself, using techniques that combined ancient meditation practices with understanding of quantum mechanics that even the Lumina found impressive. "They are doing with biological brains what we do as pure energy beings," Zalthara reported to the council. "But their approach is completely different from ours. Where we achieved consciousness projection through evolution beyond physical form, they have done it while remaining fully biological." The implications were staggering. The Lumina had spent millions of years evolving past the need for physical bodies, believing this was the only way to achieve true consciousness manipulation. But humans had found a shortcut, using their biological nature as a strength rather than a limitation. Back on Earth, Ambassador Hyun-Woo Kim prepared for his return to the Galactic Council. This time, he would not be going alone. Dr. Mi-Young-Oh, Earth's leading expert in consciousness projection, would accompany him to demonstrate humanity's true capabilities. Dr. Oh was a quiet woman who had spent her life studying the connection between mind and matter. She had been one of the first to discover that human consciousness could exist independently of the physical brain, traveling through space as pure thought and intention. "Are you ready for this?" Hyun-Woo asked as their ship approached Nexus Prime. Dr. Oh smiled peacefully. "I have been ready my entire life. The question is whether they are ready for us." When they entered the great chamber, the atmosphere was completely different from Hyun-Woo's first visit. Instead of casual dismissal and mocking laughter, the alien delegates watched the humans with wary respect and barely concealed fear. Council Prime Vextara spoke first, his cracked crystal form reflecting the chamber's lights in broken patterns. "Humans, you stand accused of possessing weapons that violate the fundamental laws of galactic civilization." "What weapons?" Hyun-Woo asked innocently. "Our ships carry no advanced armaments. Our technology is primitive by your standards. Do not insult our intelligence," Zalthara flickered angrily. "We know you possess the ability to project consciousness across space. You can influence minds and control technology through quantum, mental manipulation." Dr. O stepped forward, her expression calm and peaceful. "You are correct. We do possess this ability. Would you like a demonstration?" The chamber fell silent. Every alien delegate focused their attention on the small human, woman who looked no more threatening than a schoolteacher. Dr. O closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She did not need any visible technology or equipment. Her consciousness simply expanded beyond her physical body, reaching out to touch the minds of every being in the chamber. For just a few seconds, every alien present experienced what it meant to be human. The Vorthak delegates felt human creativity, the chaotic, beautiful process of solving problems through inspiration rather than pure logic. Their crystal minds, which had been perfectly ordered for millions of years, suddenly bloomed with new possibilities and impossible ideas. The Zephyrian representatives experienced human determination, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat even in hopeless situations. Their carefully controlled emotions were overwhelmed by the fierce passion that drove humans to attempt impossible things and somehow succeed. The Lumina beings, despite their advanced evolution, were shocked by human love. They had experienced many emotions during their existence as pure energy, but nothing like the wild, irrational devotion that humans felt for their families and friends. Most disturbing of all, every alien in the chamber briefly experienced human mortality. For species that lived for millions of years or existed as immortal energy, the knowledge that humans lived for less than a century was terrifying. But they also felt how this short lifespan made every moment precious, every relationship meaningful, every experience intense. The demonstration lasted only moments, but its impact was permanent. When Dr. O opened her eyes, the chamber was filled with the sounds of distressed aliens trying to process experiences their minds were not designed to handle. "How?" whispered Vextara, his crystal form developing new stress fractures. "How can biological minds achieve what took us millions of years of evolution?" Dr. O smiled gently. "You evolved beyond biology because you saw it as a limitation. We learned to work with our biology because we saw it as a strength." She gestured to her physical body. "You see flesh and blood as primitive. We see it as the most sophisticated quantum computer ever created. Every human brain contains more neural connections than there are stars in this galaxy." "But consciousness projection requires transcending physical form," Zalthara protested. "It is impossible for biological beings to achieve quantum mental states." "Only if you fight against your nature," Dr. O replied. "We learn to embrace what makes us human, our emotions, our creativity, our capacity for irrational hope and stubborn determination. These are not weaknesses to overcome. They are tools to amplify consciousness beyond anything pure logic can achieve." The alien delegates looked at each other in growing alarm. They were beginning to understand that humanity had not just developed a new weapon, they had discovered an entirely different path to consciousness evolution, one that might be more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Every human possesses this ability?" asked a Zephyrian commander. "Every human has the potential," Hyunwoo confirmed. "We are teaching our children to project their consciousness as naturally as they learn to walk and talk." The implications hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Earth's population was over 8 billion humans. If even a fraction of them learned consciousness projection, they would represent the largest and most powerful psychic force in galactic history. "What do you want from us?" Vexatara asked, his voice barely audible through his damaged vocal crystals. "What we have always wanted," Hyunwoo replied. "Respect, cooperation, and the chance to contribute to galactic civilization as equals." Dr. O stepped forward again. "We do not seek to conquer or dominate. We want to share what we have learned. Consciousness projection could benefit all species. not just humans. But the aliens were not comforted by this offer. They had built their civilizations on the assumption that they were superior to younger races. The discovery that humans had found a path to power that bypassed millions of years of technological development shattered their understanding of natural order. As the session ended, alien delegates filed out of the chamber in stunned silence. The galaxy had spent eons laughing at human weakness and primitive technology. Now they realized that humanity's greatest strength had been hiding in plain sight all along. The beings who thought themselves the most advanced in the galaxy had just learned they were students in the presence of masters they had dismissed as children. The balance of power was shifting, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. 1 year later, the galaxy was a very different place. President Dal-Shik Yoon stood at the head of the Galactic Council chamber, a position that would have been impossible to imagine just 2 years before. The great hall that had once echoed with alien laughter at human expense now buzzed with respectful attention as he prepared to address the assembled civilizations. The seating arrangement told the story of how much had changed. The Vorthak, who had once occupied the throne of supreme authority, now sat in advisory positions. Their crystal forms still showed the stress fractures from their encounters with human consciousness, permanent reminders of the day their perfect logic had been overwhelmed by human emotion. The Zephyrians floated in their liquid tanks near the back of the chamber, their tentacles moving in subdued patterns. Many of their military commanders had requested transfers to peaceful duties after experiencing human compassion through consciousness projection. The Lumina beings flickered with more stable light patterns than they had shown in months. Their terror at discovering a consciousness evolution path they had never imagined had gradually given way to fascination and respect. Fellow beings of the galaxy, President Yoon began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We gather, today not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in building a better future for all civilizations. In the front row of the human delegation sat Captain Ye Jin Han, one of the most skilled consciousness projection operators in the fleet. She no longer needed to hide in secret chambers aboard disguised cargo ships. Her abilities were now acknowledged and respected throughout the galaxy. I know that many of you still fear what humanity represents, President Yoon continued. You worry that our consciousness projection abilities make us too dangerous to coexist with. I understand these concerns, and I want to address them directly. He gestured to Captain Han, who stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Unlike Dr. O's dramatic demonstration a year ago, this would be a gentler introduction to humanity's true power. Captain Han will now demonstrate the positive applications of consciousness projection, President Yoon announced. But first, I need a volunteer who is experiencing psychological distress. After a moment of hesitation, a young Vorthak engineer raised one crystalline arm. Honored President, I have been suffering from confusion since my encounter with human consciousness. My logical thought patterns have been disrupted. Captain Han approached the alien with a kind smile. May I touch your consciousness with mine? I promise I will only help, not harm. The Vorthak nodded reluctantly, his crystal form flickering with nervous energy. Captain Han closed her eyes and gently reached out with her mind. Instead of overwhelming the alien with human emotions, as the military applications had done, she carefully identified the source of his confusion and began to help him process the new concepts he had experienced. The Vorthak's crystal form gradually stopped flickering as Captain Han showed him how to integrate creativity with logic, how to allow room for inspiration without abandoning rational thought. She helped him understand that emotions were not chaos to be feared, but additional sources of information that could improve decision-making. When the connection ended, the alien engineer's stress fractures began to heal for the first time in months. His crystal body sang with clear, harmonious tones instead of the discordant notes that had plagued him since his first contact with human consciousness. "The confusion is gone," he announced in wonder. "I can think clearly again, but I still retain the new concepts. It is beautiful." Murmurs of amazement swept through the chamber. The other aliens had assumed that contact with human consciousness was permanently damaging. They had not realized that humans could also heal the psychological wounds they had inadvertently caused. "This is what we offer," President Yoon said. "Not conquest through consciousness, but cooperation. We can help other species expand their mental capabilities without abandoning what makes them unique." Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim, now serving as Earth's senior diplomatic representative, stood to address specific concerns. "Some of you worry that our 8 billion humans represent an unstoppable psychic army. This is true. We could project our combined consciousness across the galaxy and overwhelm any opposition." The alien delegates shifted nervously at this reminder of humanity's power. "But consider this," Hyun-woo continued. "If we wanted to conquer you, why would we be here talking? We could have taken control of your civilizations months ago without you even knowing it was happening." This was an uncomfortable truth that the aliens had been trying not to think about. Human consciousness projection was undetectable by conventional sensors and unstoppable by known defenses. If humanity had aggressive intentions, the galaxy would already be under their control. Dr. Yoon-ji Lee, now serving as Earth's Minister of Consciousness Development, approached the podium to explain humanity's long-term goals. "We are teaching consciousness projection to any species that wants to learn. The techniques can be adapted to work with different types of minds." She activated a holographic display showing training centers that had been established on dozens of worlds. Alien volunteers were learning human meditation techniques combined with their own species' mental disciplines. "The Vorthak are discovering that creativity enhances logic rather than destroying it," Dr. Lee explained. "The Zephyrians are finding that controlled emotion makes their thoughts more efficient, not less. The Lumina are learning that biological consciousness has advantages even they had not considered." The hologram showed success stories from each program. Vorthak engineers were designing better starships by combining logical analysis with creative inspiration. Zephyrian scientists were making breakthrough discoveries by allowing intuition to guide their research. Even some Lumina had chosen to inhabit biological bodies again, finding that physical form enhanced rather than limited their consciousness abilities. "But what about the students who cannot master these techniques?" asked a Zephyrian commander. What happens to species that cannot evolve as humans have? Master Su-Jin Nam, now in her 70s but still leading consciousness research, answered from her seat in the human delegation. No one is forced to change. Consciousness projection is offered as a gift, not a requirement. Those who prefer their traditional ways of thinking are welcome to continue as they always have. She stood slowly, her aged body showing the years of intensive mental training. But we have found that every species has some form of latent consciousness projection ability. It simply requires different approaches to unlock. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was not just sharing their abilities, they were helping other species discover powers they never knew they possessed. The galaxy is becoming a more connected place, President Yoon concluded. Not through conquest or domination, but through understanding. We are learning that consciousness is not limited by biology, technology, or time. It is the one force that can truly unite all thinking beings. As the session ended, former Council Prime Vextara approached the human delegation. His crystal form still bore the marks of his encounter with human consciousness, but they had become something beautiful rather than damaged, intricate patterns that caught light in new ways. "I owe your species an apology," he said, his voice now harmonizing in ways that pure Vorthak vocal patterns never could. "We laughed at your primitive technology and simple biology. We never realized that these apparent weaknesses were actually your greatest strengths." President Yoon smiled. "There is no need for apologies. You saw what you were trained to see. Now you can see more." In the months that followed, the galaxy continued to transform. Human teachers worked alongside alien students, sharing consciousness, projection techniques while learning about different forms of mental evolution. Trade routes became more efficient as telepathically linked crews could coordinate perfectly across vast distances. Scientific research accelerated as different species' thinking patterns were combined in unprecedented ways. Not every species chose to embrace the new possibilities. Some civilizations preferred to maintain their traditional ways, and humanity respected their choice. But even these holdouts benefited from the increased cooperation and understanding that consciousness projection had brought to galactic civilization. The greatest change was in how species viewed each other. When beings could directly experience the thoughts and emotions of other races, it became impossible to see them as inferior or threatening. Prejudices that had lasted for millions of years dissolved in the face of genuine understanding. Master Su-Jin Nam spent her final years training a new generation of human consciousness projection specialists. Her students were children who had grown up in a galaxy where reaching across space with their minds was as natural as using computers had been for their parents. "Remember," she told them during one of her last classes, "consciousness projection is not about power over others. It is about connection with others. The strength to touch another mind comes with the responsibility to treat that mind with respect and compassion." The children nodded solemnly, already more mentally connected to the galaxy than any previous generation had imagined possible.